Why are you smiling like that? Camille asked from the kitchen doorway, her hand resting protectively over her barely visible bump. I looked up from the stack of papers in my hands, feeling that strange calm that comes right before your world explodes. The kind of quiet you get in a recording studio when all the soundproofing finally works perfectly. Because I know I'm not the father, I said, holding up the printed messages. My name is Peter Nolan. I'm 32, and I spend my days making buildings quieter. Acoustic engineering, sound dampening, noise control, that's my world. I install soundproofing in recording studios, concert halls, and office buildings. I make spaces where people can't hear things they're not supposed to hear. The irony wasn't lost on me. Camille's face went white. She grabbed the door frame like she might fall. Peter, what are you talking about? You're scaring me. I'd been married to Camille for 4 years. She was 30, beautiful in that effortless way that made other men turn their heads when we walked into restaurants. She worked as a wellness coach, helping stressed-out executives find their inner peace through meditation and yoga. She had this laugh that could fill a room and a smile that made you forget your problems. At least that's what I thought until 20 minutes ago. These came out of our printer, I said, waving the papers. Your phone must be synced to it. Messages between you and Jason Reese. Ring a bell? The color drained completely from her face now. Jason Reese owned CrossFit Revolution downtown. Big guy, charming smile, drove a white Dodge Charger that he parked like he owned the world. I'd met him a few times at Camille's work events. He had that easy confidence that came from never being told no. Peter, let me explain. The ultrasound date you sent him matches perfectly with when you told me you got pregnant. I continued, my voice steady as a metronome. You even discussed how the timing is complicated because you were sleeping with both of us. I discovered it by accident. We were preparing our tax documents, and I needed to print some bank statements. Our wireless printer had been acting up lately, printing random things from Camille's phone, usually just shopping lists or yoga class schedules. Today it decided to print her text conversation with Jay. The messages were detailed, intimate, and they painted a very clear picture of a relationship that had been going on for months, including specific dates that lined up perfectly with Camille's pregnancy timeline. How long? I asked. Camille sank into the kitchen chair, tears starting to flow. Peter, it's not what you think. How long, Camille? 6 months, she whispered. 6 months. Half a year of coming home to kiss my wife, asking about her day, planning for our future baby. 6 months of being a fool. I felt that hollow sensation you get in a soundproof room, like all the life had been sucked out of the space. But underneath it, there was something else, something cold and calculating. I've already called a lawyer, I said. Filed the papers this morning. Her head snapped up. This morning? But you just found out. I found out at 8 a.m. when I tried to print our W-2s. It's now 4 p.m. I've had a busy day. And I had. After the initial shock wore off, I'd moved with the precision I used when installing acoustic systems. Every measurement exact, every component in its proper place. First, I'd photographed everything. The messages, the dates, the details. Then I'd called Mitchell & Associates, a law firm that specialized in divorce cases. Then I'd visited our bank and frozen our joint accounts. Then I'd called our landlord to discuss the lease situation. Then I'd packed 2 suitcases and loaded them in my truck. You can't just leave, Camille said, panic creeping into her voice. I'm pregnant. We can work this out. You're pregnant with another man's baby, I said. There's nothing to work out. I stood up and walked to the counter where I'd left the divorce papers. I'm requesting court-ordered paternity testing. My lawyer says it's standard in these situations. Peter, please, it was a mistake. I love you. I want to be with you. I looked at her sitting there, crying, and felt nothing. It was like looking at a stranger. I've also informed our landlord that you misrepresented the household composition on our lease application. Since the baby isn't mine, and your boyfriend isn't on the lease, you're in violation of the rental agreement. Where am I supposed to go? I suggest you call Jay. I'm sure he'll be thrilled to hear about his impending fatherhood. I picked up my keys from the counter. I'll be staying at the extended stay on 5th Street until I can find something permanent. My lawyer will be in touch about the mediation schedule. You're really doing this? She asked, her voice breaking. I'm really doing this. I walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Camille? I changed the Netflix password and canceled your gym membership. Seemed like a waste since you were getting your workouts elsewhere. The last thing I heard as I closed the door was her sobbing. It should have made me feel guilty. Instead, it sounded like the first honest thing she'd done in months. The extended stay smelled like industrial cleaning solution and broken dreams, but it was quiet. After 4 years of marriage, I'd forgotten what silence sounded like. I was sitting on the polyester bedspread, eating takeout Chinese food and reviewing my documentation, when my phone started buzzing. Camille, of course. I let it go to voicemail. Then it buzzed again. And again. On the 4th call, I answered. Peter, thank God. We need to talk. We really don't. I know you're hurt, but you're not thinking clearly. You can't just abandon me while I'm pregnant. I almost laughed. I'm not abandoning you. I'm abandoning a lie. Big difference. It's your baby, too, in every way that matters. Except biologically, which is the only way that actually matters. There was a long pause. What do you want from me? Nothing. That's the point. I want nothing from you, and I want to give you nothing in return. Clean break. This is crazy. You're throwing away 4 years of marriage over one mistake. One mistake that lasted 6 months and resulted in another man's baby? That's not a mistake, Camille. That's a choice. A series of choices. I could hear her crying again. A few days ago, that sound would have melted my resolve. Now it just sounded like noise. What about our friends? What about our life? What about them? You're going to destroy everything because you're too proud to forgive me. I'm going to protect myself because I'm finally smart enough to recognize a sinking ship. I hung up and turned off my phone. The next morning, I got a call from my buddy Evan, who worked with me at Hartley Acoustics. We'd been friends since college, and he was one of the few people who knew about my situation. Dude, you need to hear this, he said. Mona's been running her mouth all over town. Mona was Camille's best friend. They'd been tight since high school, and Mona had always treated me like I wasn't quite good enough for her precious Camille. She worked as a social media manager and had the kind of personality that turned everything into drama. What's she saying? That you're having some kind of breakdown, that you abandoned your pregnant wife because you can't handle the responsibility. She's been posting about it on Facebook, talking to anyone who'll listen. I felt my jaw clench. She knows the truth. She had to know about the affair. Yeah, well, she's not telling that version of the story. This was the part I'd been dreading. In a divorce, you don't just lose your spouse, you lose the entire social ecosystem you've built together. Friends pick sides, and they usually pick the side that makes them feel better about themselves. Who else is talking? Brad and Jessica are Team Camille. So are the Hendersons. They're saying you're being cruel to a pregnant woman. Brad and Jessica were a couple we'd been friends with for years. We'd had them over for dinner dozens of times, gone on vacation together, celebrated anniversaries and birthdays. The Hendersons lived next door and had been like family. Did you tell them what really happened? I tried. But Mona's got her story out first, and it's more dramatic. Abandoned pregnant wife versus cheating spouse? Guess which one gets more sympathy? I closed my eyes and rubbed my temples. What about you? What about me? Are you Team Camille too? Are you kidding? I saw those text messages. I know what she did. But Peter, you need to understand. Most people don't know the truth, and Camille's not exactly advertising it. After I hung up with Evan, I sat in my hotel room and thought about damage control. In acoustic engineering, you learn that sound waves behave predictably. They bounce off hard surfaces, get absorbed by soft ones, and travel through the path of least resistance. Gossip works the same way. And right now, Camille's version of events was bouncing around our social circle while my side of the story was getting absorbed and muffled. I needed to change that. I spent the afternoon reaching out to friends, trying to set the record straight. The conversations were awkward and painful. "Peter, I heard about you and Camille," said Jessica when I called her. "I can't believe you're putting her through this right now." "Did she tell you why I filed for divorce?" "She said you're having some kind of crisis, that you got scared about becoming a father and started imagining things." "Jessica, she's been having an affair for 6 months. The baby isn't mine." Silence on the other end. "Then, that doesn't sound like Camille. I have proof. Text messages, dates, everything." "I don't know, Peter. This all seems very sudden. Maybe you should give it some time. Think it through." "I've thought it through plenty." "Well, I hope you figure things out. Camille needs support right now, not accusations." She hung up before I could respond. The conversation with the Hendersons went similarly. So did the one with our neighbors, the Kowalskis. By evening, I realized that Camille had done exactly what I would have done if I were in her position. She'd controlled the narrative. But I had something she didn't have. I had the truth. And I was good at documentation. I spent that night organizing everything. Photos of the text messages, timeline of events, bank records showing suspicious charges at restaurants and hotels I'd never been to. I created a comprehensive file that told the real story. Then I started making copies. The mediation was scheduled for the following Tuesday at Mitchell and Associates. I arrived 15 minutes early and sat in the waiting room, reviewing my notes. Camille walked in 5 minutes late with a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, expensive suit, briefcase that probably cost more than my monthly salary. She'd hired serious legal firepower. "Mr. Nolan?" The mediator, a tired-looking woman named Patricia Wells, called us into her office. "Let's get started." The next 2 hours were brutal. Camille's lawyer, a guy named Richardson, came out swinging. I was unstable, vindictive, abandoning my responsibilities. I was trying to escape child support through false accusations. "My client is prepared to undergo paternity testing," Richardson said, "but only after the child is born. Prenatal testing carries risks that we're not willing to take." "That's convenient," my lawyer, Sarah Mitchell, replied. "My client has documented evidence of infidelity, including specific dates and communications. Alleged communications that could easily be fabricated." I slid the folder across the table. "Those are photos of the original printouts. You're welcome to examine Camille's phone to verify authenticity." Camille wouldn't meet my eyes. She sat there looking pale and fragile, playing the victim perfectly. "Even if there was an indiscretion," Richardson continued, "that doesn't necessarily mean Mr. Nolan isn't the father. The timing could support either possibility." "Then we'll wait for the test results," Sarah said. "But in the meantime, my client shouldn't be responsible for supporting a pregnancy that may not be his." The mediator looked exhausted. "I'm going to recommend court-ordered paternity testing as soon as it's safe to perform. Until then, Mr. Nolan, you'll need to continue providing spousal support." "What about the lease violation?" I asked. "That's a separate matter for housing court." When we left the building, Camille was waiting by my truck. "Are you happy now?" she asked. "You're destroying my life." "I'm protecting mine. I lost 3 clients this week. Word is getting around about the divorce, and people are asking questions." "Good," I thought. "Maybe you should have considered that before you decided to cheat." "It wasn't supposed to happen, it just did." "For 6 months? You accidentally fell into bed with Jay for 6 months?" She started crying again. I was confused. Our marriage was in a rut. You were working all the time and we barely talked anymore. "So you decided to talk to Jay instead?" "Very thoroughly, from what I read." "You're being cruel." I'm being honest. You should try it sometime. I got in my truck and drove away, leaving her standing in the parking lot. That evening, Evan called with more updates from the gossip front. It's getting weird, man. Mona's been posting stuff about you on social media, calling you an irresponsible dad, saying you're mentally unstable. What kind of stuff? Photos of Camille looking sad, long posts about how pregnancy is hard enough without dealing with an unsupportive partner. She's really working the sympathy angle. I felt my anger building. Mona had known about the affair. I was sure of it. Camille told her everything, and there was no way she'd kept this secret. Now she was helping to spread lies about me. Forward me the posts, I said. Peter, don't do anything stupid. Define stupid. You know what I mean. Don't engage with her online. Don't give her more ammunition. But I was already forming a plan. In acoustics, when you have unwanted noise, you don't just ignore it. You either absorb it, redirect it, or cancel it out with opposing frequencies. It was time to cancel out some noise. I started with research, social media profiles, public records, employment information. Mona worked for a boutique marketing firm that specialized in wellness brands. Her job was all about maintaining positive online presence for her clients. What would happen if her own online presence became a liability? I spent the next day documenting every post she'd made about my situation, screenshots, timestamps, everything. Then I started digging into her history. It didn't take long to find what I was looking for. Photos from last year's company Christmas party showed Mona getting very cozy with her married boss. More digging revealed a pattern of inappropriate workplace relationships and unprofessional social media behavior. I compiled everything into a neat package and sent it anonymously to Mona's HR department. Then I waited. The results came faster than I'd expected. 2 days later, Evan called with news. Mona got fired, he said. Something about violating the company's social media policy and creating a hostile work environment. That's unfortunate, I said, trying to keep the satisfaction out of my voice. She's freaking out, posting about how someone's trying to destroy her life, how she's being targeted for supporting a friend. Karma's a funny thing. Peter, I didn't do anything illegal or unethical. I just made sure the right people had access to publicly available information. Dude. What? She wanted to play games with people's reputations. I just showed her how the game works. But Mona's firing was just the opening move. The real confrontation was still coming. The call came on a Friday night. I was in my hotel room, working on a proposal for a new concert hall project, when my phone rang. Unknown number. Peter, it's Brad. Brad Morrison. He and his wife Jessica had been our closest friends for 3 years. We'd spent countless weekends together, gone on vacation to Colorado last summer, been each other's emergency contacts. Hey Brad, we need to talk. Can you meet us at Murphy's in an hour? Murphy's was a sports bar downtown where we used to watch games together. The tone in Brad's voice told me this wasn't going to be a friendly reunion. Sure, I'll be there. I arrived to find Brad and Jessica at our usual table in the back corner. They both looked uncomfortable, like they'd rather be anywhere else. Thanks for coming, Jessica said as I sat down. What's this about? Brad leaned forward. We've been talking to Camille and Mona, and honestly, Peter, we're concerned about you. Concerned how? This whole thing with the divorce, Jessica said. It seems really extreme. Camille's pregnant, and you just abandoned her. I felt my patience starting to fray. Did she tell you why I left? She said you got scared about becoming a father and started making accusations, Brad said. Look, man, I get it. Pregnancy is scary, but you can't just run away. I didn't run away. I left because she's been cheating on me for 6 months, and the baby isn't mine. They exchanged glances. Jessica shook her head. Peter, that doesn't sound like Camille at all. It doesn't sound like the Camille you know, but it's exactly like the Camille I married. You have proof of this? Brad asked. I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos of the text messages. They read in silence, their expressions changing as they absorbed the details. "Holy shit," Brad whispered. This is really bad," Jessica said. "Yeah, it is." They looked at each other again, having one of those wordless, married couple conversations. "Okay," Brad said finally. "This changes things. But Peter, you could have handled this better." "How so?" "You didn't have to humiliate her publicly. You didn't have to destroy Mona's career." I stared at him. "I didn't humiliate anyone publicly. I filed for divorce and moved out. That's it." "Mona lost her job," Jessica said. "She thinks you had something to do with it." "Mona lost her job because she has poor judgment and worse boundaries. That's not my problem." "It is, if you caused it." "I didn't cause anything. I just made sure people had accurate information." Brad leaned back in his chair. "Look, I get that you're angry. I'd be furious too. But you're taking this too far." "Too far?" "My wife cheated on me for 6 months and got pregnant by another man. She's been lying to everyone about why I left, and her best friend has been spreading those lies all over social media. But I'm taking it too far?" "You're being vindictive," Jessica said. "This isn't like you." "You're right. The old me would have just taken it, would have let them control the narrative and destroy my reputation while I tried to be the bigger person. But the old me was a sucker." "So what's the new you going to do?" Brad asked. "Whatever it takes to protect myself." The conversation went downhill from there. They tried to convince me to reconcile with Camille, to work things out for the sake of the baby. When I refused, they got frustrated. "You're being selfish," Jessica said. "That baby deserves a father." "That baby has a father. His name is Jason Reese, and he owns a gym downtown. Maybe you should have this conversation with him." "You know what I mean." "I know exactly what you mean. You want me to raise another man's child so you can all feel better about the situation. So you don't have to deal with the messy reality of what Camille did." "We're trying to be good friends to both of you," Brad said. "No, you're trying to be good friends to Camille. I'm just the inconvenient ex-husband who won't play along." I stood up and threw a 20 on the table. "Thanks for the intervention, but I'm good." "Peter, wait," Jessica called after me. But I was already walking away. The next morning I got a text from Evan. "Heard you had words with Brad and Jessica last night. They're telling people you've lost it." Of course they were. I'd refused to play the role they'd assigned me, the repentant husband who comes crawling back. So now I was the villain. I was starting to understand that this wasn't just about Camille anymore. It was about a whole social system that had decided I was the problem because I wouldn't enable their comfortable fiction. Time to show them what a real problem looked like. Jason Reese's gym was everything you'd expect from a guy who drove a white Charger and seduced other men's wives. Loud music, motivational posters, and enough chrome to blind a pilot. I'd been watching the place for a week, learning the patterns. Jay arrived every morning at 6 a.m., left for lunch around noon, and stayed until closing at 9 p.m. He was predictable, which made him vulnerable. The beauty of working in acoustics is that you learn how sound really works. Most people think it's simple. Loud noises are annoying, quiet is peaceful. But sound is actually incredibly complex. It can be focused, redirected, amplified, and weaponized. I'd been planning this for 2 weeks, ever since the confrontation with Brad and Jessica. If everyone wanted to paint me as the villain, I might as well earn the title. The first phase was simple. Jay's precious Charger was parked in the same spot every day, right in front of the gym where everyone could see it. He was proud of that car, always posting photos of it on social media, talking about the custom sound system he'd installed. I waited until Tuesday night, when the gym was closed and the parking lot was empty. Then I got to work. The beauty of modern cars is that they're full of electronic systems that can be accessed if you know what you're doing. And after 4 years of marriage to a cheating wife, I'd developed some interesting skills. I didn't damage anything. That would be illegal. Instead, I made some creative modifications to his sound system. Specifically, I programmed it to play a very special recording every time he started the engine. The recording was a compilation of his text messages with Camille, read aloud by a text-to-speech program. All the intimate details, all the planning, all the lies, set to autoplay at maximum volume. I also left a small gift on his windshield, printouts of every message between him and my wife, neatly organized in a folder labeled Evidence. Then I went home and waited. The call came the next morning. Evan was laughing so hard he could barely speak. "Dude, you have to see this. Jay's car is broadcasting his affair to the entire neighborhood. There's a crowd of people recording it with their phones. That's unfortunate for him. Peter, this is insane. The recording is playing his text messages where he's talking about how much better he is in bed than you. Truth hurts. He can't turn it off. He's standing there hitting buttons, but it just keeps playing." I felt a warm satisfaction spreading through my chest. Technology can be tricky. But that was just the opening act. The real show was scheduled for that evening. Jay's gym hosted a weekly community fitness night every Wednesday. Local business owners, city council members, anyone who wanted to network while pretending to exercise. It was Jay's pride and joy, his chance to play the successful entrepreneur. I'd been planning this part for days, using my access to the building's acoustic systems. The gym was in a converted warehouse that I'd worked on 2 years ago, installing sound dampening for the apartment units above. I still had the building schematics and knew exactly how the audio system was wired. At 7 p.m., I was parked across the street, watching through the gym's windows as the community fitness night got underway. About 30 people inside, including several I recognized from around town. At 7:15, I activated the system I'd installed earlier that day. Every speaker in the building, the main sound system, the emergency announcement speakers, even the Bluetooth speakers in the office, began playing a very special presentation. It started with Jay's voice, recorded from one of his many voicemails to Camille. "Baby, I can't wait to get you alone tonight. Your husband has no idea what he's missing." Then Camille's voice, from a recording she'd sent him. "I feel so guilty, but I can't help myself. You make me feel things Peter never could." The crowd in the gym stopped exercising and started looking around in confusion. Jay was frantically trying to find the source of the sound, but I'd hidden the transmitters well. The recording continued for 10 minutes, playing the greatest hits of their 6-month affair. By the time it ended, half the crowd had their phones out, recording everything. Jay was standing in the middle of the gym, red-faced and humiliated, shouting at his staff to fix the sound system. But the best part was yet to come. As people started to leave, talking excitedly about what they'd just heard, I made one final call, the local news station's tip line. "Hi, I'd like to report a story. There's a gym owner downtown who's been having an affair with a married woman, and the whole thing just got exposed in front of half the city council." The story made the 11 o'clock news. Not the affair specifically, but the technical malfunction at CrossFit Revolution that had accidentally broadcast private conversations to a room full of community leaders. The reporter, a young woman with serious ambitions, had done her homework. She'd talked to several witnesses and pieced together enough of the story to make it clear what had really happened. Jay's reputation was destroyed overnight. By morning, half his membership had canceled, and his landlord was asking questions about the disturbances at the property. But I wasn't done yet. The final phase required patience. I waited 2 weeks, letting the initial scandal fade, letting Jay think the worst was over. Then I made my move. The confrontation I'd been waiting for came on a rainy Thursday night. I was leaving the hardware store, loading soundproofing materials into my truck, when Jay appeared. He looked like hell. 2 weeks of public humiliation had taken their toll. His gym was hemorrhaging members, his social media accounts were flooded with negative comments, and word around town was that several of his business partners were reconsidering their investments. You snake, he said, stepping out from between two parked cars. I didn't look surprised. I'd been expecting this. Evening, Jay. How's business? You destroyed my life. I documented your choices. There's a difference. He moved closer, and I could smell alcohol on his breath. You think you're so smart, but you have no idea who you're messing with. Actually, I know exactly who I'm messing with. A small-time gym owner who seduces married women and runs away when things get complicated. His face flushed red. She came to me, you pathetic loser. She was desperate to get away from you. And yet she never mentioned divorce until I filed the papers. Funny how that works. You want to know the truth? She told me all about you. How boring you are. How you never satisfied her. How she had to fake it for years just to spare your feelings. I felt the anger building, but I kept my voice calm. Did she tell you that while you were planning how to handle the baby situation? Because those text messages were pretty detailed. That baby is mine, he said, stepping closer. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. Interesting, because last I heard, you'd blocked her number and refused to return her calls. I was figuring things out. You were running away, just like you're going to run away now. He swung at me then, a clumsy right hook that I saw coming from a mile away. I stepped back and let him stumble forward into the side of my truck. Feel better? I asked. He spun around and came at me again, but this time I was ready. I grabbed his wrist and twisted, using his momentum to spin him around and slam him face first against the truck bed. Here's what's going to happen, I said, keeping his arm pinned behind his back. You're going to walk away and never contact me again. You're going to take responsibility for your baby and leave me out of it. Screw you, he gasped. I twisted his arm a little higher. You're also going to stop telling people that this is somehow my fault. You made your choices and now you get to live with them. I let him go and stepped back. He turned around, rubbing his shoulder, murder in his eyes. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is, because if you come near me again, I'll make what happened at your gym look like a minor inconvenience. He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked away into the rain. But I knew he was right about one thing. It wasn't over. Not yet. The final piece of my revenge required one last performance, and I'd been saving the best for last. 3 days later, I got a call from Sarah Mitchell, my lawyer. The paternity test results are in, she said. You're not the father. I know. The court's going to dismiss Camille's claims for child support, and you'll be free to finalize the divorce. What about the property settlement? Clean split. She keeps her business assets, you keep yours. No alimony since the marriage was terminated due to infidelity. And the lease? Landlord's evicting her at the end of the month. Turns out having your personal drama broadcast on the local news isn't great for property values. I hung up, feeling lighter than I had in months. But there was still one more thing I needed to do. That evening, I drove to the house I used to share with Camille. She was loading boxes into a rental truck, preparing for her move. She looked tired and defeated. Peter, she said when she saw me, I wasn't sure you'd come. I wanted to return these, I said, holding up her spare keys. She took them without meeting my eyes. I guess you got what you wanted. I got what I deserved. Truth, justice, and a fresh start. You destroyed everything. My reputation, my business, my friendships. Was it worth it? I thought about that for a moment. You know what the funny thing is? I spent weeks planning elaborate revenge schemes, but in the end, all I had to do was tell the truth. Everything that happened to you was just the natural consequence of your choices. I made a mistake. You made 100 mistakes. Every day for 6 months, you chose to lie to me. Every time you kissed me goodnight while carrying another man's baby. Every time you let me plan for a future that was built on deception. She started crying again, but this time it didn't affect me at all. I'm sorry, she whispered. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry there were consequences. But you're not sorry you did it. Because if you were truly sorry, you would have told me the truth instead of making me find out from a printer malfunction. I turned to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Camille? The next time you decide to cheat on someone, maybe don't sync your phone to the household printer. Just a thought. As I drove away from that house for the last time, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Peace. Not the hollow quiet of a soundproof room, but the genuine silence that comes when all the noise finally stops. My phone buzzed with a text from Evan. Heard through the grapevine that Jay's gym is closing next month. Apparently his investors pulled out. Also, Mona's moved back in with her parents. Rough times all around. I smiled and typed back, "Sounds like the market corrected itself." 6 months later, I was living in a new city, working on the acoustic design for a major concert hall. I'd left behind the whole mess, the friends who'd chosen sides, the social circle that had tried to make me the villain, the entire ecosystem of lies and enablement. I'd learned something important about sound during those months. Silence isn't the absence of noise. It's the presence of peace. And for the first time in years, my world was finally, perfectly quiet. I never heard from Camille again, or Jay, or any of the friends who'd tried to convince me to be the bigger person while enabling my wife's betrayal. Sometimes the best revenge isn't elaborate schemes or public humiliation. Sometimes it's just walking away and letting people face the consequences of their choices without your help. The truth has its own frequency, and once you learn to hear it, everything else just sounds like noise.